Over the sea foam, briskly may the breeze blow my sailor laddie home. Old Song. 7 long, weary days and nights I passed with that dreadful vision ever present in my mind. I'd given up all hope of rescue. The cruelty of my captor did not descend to petty annoyances. He knew full well they would pass unheeded, rightly deeming the contemplation of my horrible fate a sufficient torture. Hardigoff made his usual visits, always alone. The turnkeys were kept away from my cell. His words were few. Often he never spoke, knowing full well he could bring no hope, no consolation. I tried sometimes to school myself with philosophical reflections of the old Greek and Roman Stoics on death, but was compelled to acknowledge with Rochefoucauld that, while philosophy easily triumphs over past and future evils, present evils always triumph over philosophy. Sometimes I felt inspired with that Byronic but none the less gallant courage which can make even the most timid soul sing. There's a sight to those who love me, and a smile to those who hate, and whatever skies above me, here's a heart for every fate. But I soon found that, while any brave man can face danger with courage and contemplate the violent and painful termination of his mortal career with fortitude and manly resignation, still the only balm to hurt minds when suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and waiting the approach of death, it's to be found in that true Christian philosophy which is alone the anchor to the soul. One night I was awakened by a gentle touch on my shoulder. I glanced around. By the feeble ray of the prison lamp shining in the corridor, I saw a figure bending over me, and a voice whispered my name. "Who's there?" I exclaimed. "Hush!" whispered the voice. "'Tis I, Lady Chumpviant. Elphine, that was. Elphine, that was." I sprang from the cot in astonishment. A tall form was standing in the gloom near the door. "Who is that man?" "Speak low," she replied, placing her finger on my lips. "'Tis my husband, Lord Chumpyvant. We have come to release you from this prison." I clasped her hand in astonishment and gratitude. Lord Chumpyvant came forward. I could not distinguish his features in the dim light, but recognized his voice. He shook me warmly by the hand. "Lieutenant Hamilton," he said with fervor, "my wife and I can never forget the great service you and Prince Altafora rendered us on the Magic Isle. Had it not been for you and your brave eagles, those infernal alligator bats would have surely made a dinner off this newly wedded pair in the midst of their honeymoon, a not very pleasant winding up of our bridal trip. We wish now to return the compliment. My little wife has got up a plan into which I can enter heart and soul for your release, and I assure you she never yet failed in anything she undertook. We'll have you out of this dungeon in less than 60 minutes, in spite of my sweet coz Diovajar and all his turnkeys. The precious rascal! It's a pity you had not smashed him effectually with that solid and forcible treatise on ethics and moral philosophy." "The cowardly wretch!" exclaimed Lord Chumpyvant with indignation. "His insults and attack upon you, Lieutenant, at the Minister's palace, his coat of mail and electric battery, the farce of your trial and condemnation. Except among his own favorites in his corrupt court, he is universally despised by everyone in his kingdom. And now," continued Lord Chumpyvant, "time presses, and what is to be done must be quickly. You've heard the news?" "No," I replied. "Our good and long-suffering king is dead. Diovajar is at the palace. He is now virtually emperor and wields supreme power. His coronation will take place immediately after the obsequies of his father. He is known to be inimical to our Minister Leaf, who will resign. He will dismiss the cabinet and appoint his own favorites." "Heaven help this unfortunate kingdom," said I. "And so say I. Under Leaf's power all went well. He stood between the haughty and the tyrannous nobility and an oppressed people. But now the outlook is terrible. Diovajar is one of the most vicious, depraved, and cruel of men. Under his regime and that of his licentious court, universal corruption of manners will prevail. Increased taxation, misrule, and tyranny will hold sway. Rebellion and bloodshed will arise, which will end either in his dethronement or the destruction of the kingdom." I briefly related Diovajar's plot to secure the hand of Prince Sulima by means of forged proposals, letters, etc. my interview with the Duchess Alessandra, without alluding to her confession, nor her plan to effect my rescue. Her Grace occupies an eminent station in the ranks of our nobility, said he. She is the one of the most noble-hearted and generous, as well as most beautiful women in our kingdom. She and Divajar's late wife were devoted friends, exchanged miniatures, letters, etc. That's the way he obtained hers. She has done everything in her power to secure your release, and had the king survived, would have effected it. By Divajar's orders, the death watch was kept on you in the adjoining cell, and her visit was immediately reported to him. But he gained nothing by it, as the watch could not hear your conversation. She is his sworn enemy, and he stands in fear of her influence. Many of the more powerful and better class of our nobility are enlisted on her side. I breathed freely. The plot to secure my release was not discovered. Our plan is all arranged. My rank and kinship to Divajar give me the privilege to visit condemned prisoners. Hardigoth is under great obligation to me. I once saved his life from Divajar's violence and secured his appointment here. He will help me at the risk of his life, has given me the keys, and will be conveniently absent until the proper time. The death watch has been dismissed for the night. My wife and I gave a little banquet to the guards and turnkeys this evening, and plied the latter liberally with wine, doused with sleeping potion. I'll take a peep at them, she said, then stepped to the door, looked out, and tripped back. The potion has worked admirably. They are sound asleep. And it would hardly be deemed proper for Lady Chumpavant to visit condemned prisoners in propria persona. In order to carry out her plan, she has assumed disguise and appears as my young sailor nephew, a scapegrace of a midshipman, just returned from a long sea voyage, and he turned up the light. My Lady Chumpavant threw off her cloak, and to my astonishment was completely transformed into a handsome sailor lad, a jaunty cap cocked on one side of her pretty head, covered with its glossy black curls, swaggering up to me in regular sailor style, her eyes dancing with fun. "How are ye, shipmate? Glad to see ye, my hearty. Shiver me jib, but you're a right trim looking chap. I'll introduce myself. My name is Tommy Topsail. I'm a middy, and a regular out-and-outer. This old chap is my Uncle Chummy. Do you understand?" "Perfectly," I replied. "All right, Lieutenant. We are to get up a little serio-comedy entitled How to Get Out of Jail. In one act, and with 4 dramatici personae. Lord Chumpavant assumes the character of Lieutenant Hamilton. The lieutenant assumes that of his lordship. I assume that of his nephew, Tommy Topsail. When we get outside and appear before the audience, I'll prompt you with what to say. You must play your role, and I'll play mine. You must call me Tommy, and I'll call you Uncle Chummy, Governor, Old Fogey, as the occasion requires." "We will now dress for the performance," said his lordship. "And as we have but one dressing room in common, modesty dictates I close my eyes to this part of the performance. In the meantime, I request you gentlemen to hurry up and get through with the toilette business as soon as possible." And throwing her cloak over her head, she took a seat in the corner. His lordship drew out a key, unlocked my manacles, hoop, and chains. We quickly changed costumes, he putting on my prison suit, and I his rich dress. As we were about the same size and height, the exchanges fitted tolerably well. "All's ready, Tommy," said his lordship. "Bring on your beautifiers." Tommy drew from the pocket of his cloak a little box of paints, brushes, bottles of hair dye, and a wig of black hair. Then, with the skill of an artist, painted my face, neck, and hands in genuine Pluto-Martian colors, dyed my eyebrows and mustache black, put the wig on my head, completely concealing the prison cut of my hair. Then, smash my deadlights! If I haven't got a pair of twin Uncle Chummies here! I looked at myself in the glass and was compelled to admit that I was twin number 2. Tommy now painted his lordship's countenance in lieutenant's colors, and dyed his hair, mustache, and eyebrows a rich chestnut. "Capital," said he, "and I am transformed into the lieutenant. Now clasp on the irons and tie me to the cot." We put on the manacles and fastened him hand and foot to the cot with a rope she had bought. "Now the gag, so I can't call for help." Tommy tied a handkerchief over his mouth, then rolled up my uniform in a bundle, threw on his sailor's cap and cloak. I donned his lordship's hat and boots. "Come here, scamp," she said, and a diminutive but exceedingly frisky specimen of a Pluto Martian terrier capered out of the corner. His appearance would have excited immense enthusiasm among our fair fashionables who affect such pets. His grey hair was upright and stiff as wire. His abbreviated caudal appendages were like that of a spike, and had only two movements, up and down. His ears were cropped, comme il fait. He would jump like a kangaroo, run backwards, sideways, or forwards with equal facility, and his diabolical physiognomy would have made any terrestrian bull-terrier, skye, pug, or poodle expire in convulsions of horror. "Now, you scamp," said she, shaking her finger at him, "when your cue comes, be sure you don't make mistakes. If you do, look out." "Yep, yep, yep," Scamp replied, evidently fully comprehending the importance of the role assigned to him. "Scamp's part in the play is a highly prominent one," said she. "Come, be off," puffed Lord Chumpavent through the gag. "All right, Chummy," she said, kissing him on the cheek and taking the keys. "It's a regular elopement, you understand." The prediction of Thermidor was fulfilled. "What?" I exclaimed. "An elopement? I don't exactly understand this performance. What's his lordship going to do about it?" And dim visions of pistols, coffees, etc. began to float around. "Phew!" he puffed through the gag. "Can't you see? I lay quiet here till the jailer comes in tomorrow morning. You and I had a fight. You knocked me down in the first round, made me change clothes, and painted and dyed me, and elope with my wife to parts unknown. The hue and cry will be raised. Diavajar will fully sympathize with the wronged and injured husband. Ordered up the police airships, scour the kingdom. In the meantime, you'll be safe with your friends in Mandal Ultima. When it's all over, as my wife can't come back here, of course I'll go there, if they'll receive me." "Come, by all means," I replied, warmly pressing his hand. "The Duke and Princess will never forget this noble act of yourself and lady." "Be off quick," he replied. "Farewell, little wife, till we meet again." Lady Chumpavant kissed and embraced her lord affectionately, pinned on the lapel of his coat a paper which she had just written, put the bundle under her arm, called Scamp. We passed out and locked the door. On the paper was written: "Dear Huzzy Bundy, your darling wife has concluded to try conclusions with U.S. lieutenant, who enters heart and soul in the elopement business. Variety is the spice of life, as well as of love. Variety is the spice of love as well as life. You are at liberty to try another matrimonial experiment. Regards to dear cousin Diavajar. Tell him I wish him joy of his matrimonial speculation. Remind him also that there's many a slip between the cup and the lip, and the best laid schemes of mice and men gang ath a glee. P.S. Think tenderly of me, chummy, as one who loved not wisely but too well. And you can sing, Thou art gone from my gaze like a beautiful dream. Or, Fly away, pretty moth, as you please. Meanwhile I'll sing, Farewell, farewell, and if forever, still forever, farewell thee. Your loving wife, that was, Elif.